Today we are going to do day 2 of chapter 4, which are the last two lessons. We're going to start off this lesson by talking about correlation coefficient. So your correlation coefficient measures the strength and the direction of the relationship between two variables, and it's represented by the letter R. So your correlation coefficient is represented by the letter R. Up until this point, we've talked about the type of correlation we may have, positive, negative, or none. However, we can be more detailed and a little bit more specific. So we focus on just the positive side. I can have a weak positive, a moderate positive, or a strong positive. It depends on where it falls within this range, with one being a perfectly straight line. Okay? Same thing over here on the left. I can have a weak negative, a moderate negative, and a strong negative, depending on where it falls in your range, with -1 being a perfectly straight line. So now we're just going to add those new words, so weak, moderate, or strong, to our existing positive or negative correlations. So I'm going to look at the first one, so letter A. I can see that it's negative, so I'm going to focus on the negative side. Then I want to focus and see where this number falls on this line. So negative 0.751 is probably in here, meaning it's a moderate. So I'm going to write that this is a moderate negative correlation. So now we're just being a little bit more specific. Okay, for letter B, I can see that it's positive, so I'm going to look at the positive side. I'm going to see where 0.902 falls. If I look over here on the positive side, it falls in here, meaning it's a strong. So I'm going to write strong, positive correlation. And then for letter C, I can see that it's negative, and then I want to see where it falls within the negative side. So this negative 0.999 falls in here. So it's a strong negative correlation. Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to move on to the next page. Okay, so I'm going to type this information, this table, into Desmos. I'm going to follow the same steps as I did the previous, like in the previous video. So I'm going to type it into my table, zoom it into my points, and then type in my equation. Okay, so those are the steps that I'm following with this table. So I'm going to switch my screen so that I can show you what I'm typing in, and then that way we can get our answers. Okay, so I'm going to go to Desmos. I'm going to click on this plus. Then I'm going to click on table, and I can go ahead and type in my table values. Make sure that you're just very careful about how you type them in. Take your time. That way you don't make any mistakes. Okay, perfect. So I've typed in all my points from my table on my note packet. I'm gonna press the little plus sign, and now it's zoomed in. Then I'm gonna type in my equation. Remember, the equation is in your note packet. It's y1 tilde squiggly line mx1 plus b. And then I have my information here. These are the numbers that I'm going to write in my note packet. And so these are the numbers that I'm referring to when I switch back to the document camera. Okay. So the numbers that I saw on Desmos are the numbers that I'm going to write here. And so those numbers were negative 6.16396. Okay, for my B, it was 144921113, and then for my R is 9996. Okay, remember you want to write the exact number that you get from Desmos, and then we'll round afterwards. So your M and your B will be to the nearest whole number. whole number meaning no decimals. So I'm going to put a line underneath the number before the decimal. And I'm going to draw an arrow to the number after the decimal. Okay, remember, if it's 0 through 4, it stays the same. If it's 5 through 9, it goes up. Because the 1 is 0 through 4, the negative 6 will stay the same. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing for B. Okay, underline the number before the decimal and draw an arrow to the number afterwards. Okay, I'm looking at the 2. The 2 is 0 through 4. So because the 2 is 0 through 4, the 9 will stay the same. So this stays as 1, 4, 4, 9. And then my R is to the thousandths place or 3 decimal places. So I look at my decimal and I count 3 numbers afterwards. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to draw a line underneath and an arrow. Okay, this is a special case. So because the 6 is 5 through 9, it technically makes the 9 go up, which makes the following 9 go up, which makes the 9 go up, which makes the 0 go up to a negative 1. The problem is that if I look back at the graph on Desmos, it's not a perfectly straight line, meaning the line that's on the screen doesn't go through each point perfectly. Because of that, I don't want to round it to negative 1 because that would be a perfect straight line. So I am just going to cut it off at 3 decimals because I don't want to necessarily round it to negative 1, but I still want to follow the directions of 3 decimal places. So I'm just cutting off the 6. So this is a special case. All right, when I'm writing my equation, okay, it's y equals, but remember since we're rounding, use the approximation. Negative 6x plus 1449. Okay, and then part B says, what does this correlation coefficient indicate about the relationship between the variables? So we want to determine, do I have a positive, negative, or no correlation? And then is it weak, moderate, or strong? So if you look at your Desmos graph, you'll see that it's negative. If you also look at your slope, you'll see that your slope is negative. So since my slope is negative, I want to look at the negative side of my chart. I'll go back to my chart. And I want to see where this number falls. And then you see how this number is negative, so I'm going to look at the negative side. So negative side, that 0.999 falls right here in this category. So it's a strong negative correlation. And then between the two things that I'm talking about. So when I write my sentence, I'm going to say there is a strong negative correlation between, so this part is new. Correlation coefficient is asking you for this. And then between your variables is between what two things are you talking about? Okay, so between days since hibernation and weight in pounds. And what are we talking about specifically? A polar bear. So we're going to say between days since hibernation and weight in pounds for a polar bear. So between the two variables is between the two things that we're talking about. And we're talking about days and weights. So just be very careful about the sentences because all the sentences are a little bit different. Okay, so then for the try it at the bottom, I am going to have you try it. So I do want you to pause the video here so that you can type this information into Desmos, this table. Then you're going to unpause it and we're going to go through it together. Okay, so hopefully you were able to pause the video and come back. I am only going to give you the rounded answers in hopes that you plugged in these values, right? Like you got these numbers from your table. Okay, my rounded answer here is 7. My rounded answer here is 1. And my rounded answer here is 9/7/8. So my equation is 7x plus 1. Okay, perfect. Then I want to think about and I want to write my sentence. So I can see that my R is positive. So I want to see where this number falls in the positive side of my correlation coefficient like chart. So if I look at the positive side, that R is in here, meaning it's a strong positive. Okay, so I'm going to say there is a strong positive correlation between, okay, and the two things that I'm talking about are time in minutes and volume in gallons. However, I'm talking about a bathtub that is filling up with water and obviously like the time that passes as I'm filling up the tub with water. So between, I'm going to put minutes, and the minutes are passing. So I'm going to put minutes passing, and the gallons of water in a bathtub. So the two things that I'm talking about are time and volume. Okay, remember, correlation coefficient is strong positive correlation. And then my two variables are my minutes and the gallons of water. All right, once you have that, we're going to turn to the next page. Okay, perfect. So here I'm talking about correlation versus causation. For the sake of this lesson, we are going to say that a correlation is a false statement. Okay, just for this lesson, because technically everything is a correlation, and we're going to say causation is a true statement, true sentence. So a correlation describes the relationship between two things, events, or variables, and how closely they are related. Okay, so keep in mind, just for this lesson, a correlation is technically false. Versus a causation, meaning that one change in a variable changes the other. Okay, so one impacts the other. So below, we are going to be given 4 statements. We have to decide if we think those statements are true or if they're false. Then you have to be able to explain your reasoning. As long as you are able to explain yourself, you could go either way. You could say it's correlation or you could say it's causation. So let's look at the first one together. So students that have higher grades study more. Okay, if you think this is true, we would write causation. If you think this is false, we write correlation. Okay, I'll do one with you. So for this one, I'll say something like causation. So I'm saying this is a true statement. Students that have higher grades, and the reason is because they study more. Okay, then you have to explain your own reasoning. So you have to be able to defend your answer. Okay, so you have to go and fill in your explanation. I'm only going to decide if it's true or false, and then you have to go and explain it. Okay, let's try the second one. After I washed my car, it rained. Therefore, washing my car causes it to rain. If you think this is true, you write causation. If you think this is false, you write correlation. I personally think it's not true. Me washing my car does not affect the weather. So for this one, I could say something like correlation because me washing my car does not affect the weather. Okay? And so for the final two, you are going to decide if you think it's causation or correlation, and then you have to give your explanation. So for these two, you are going to pick which one you think it is, and then go ahead and explain it. And that's the end of chapter 4. So once you have these two done, then you're done with your notes for today.